In the bustling city where wealth and power ruled, there was one man who seemed to be impervious to the charms of any woman, CEO Lu Chen. Cold, calculated, and seemingly unbothered by the affections of others, Lu Chen was a man who had everything a woman could desire: power, money, and a sharp mind. But despite all of that, he had turned down every woman set up on blind dates by his matchmaking friends. To him, the perfect woman didn't exist. Or at least, that's what he convinced himself. But little did he know, his world was about to be shaken by a woman unlike any he had encountered before. Enter Jia Yu, a woman with her own troubles, insecurities, and a plan that would change her life forever. Jia Yu wasn't rich, wasn't famous, and in her eyes, wasn't even particularly attractive. But what she did have was a plan. One that was simple, yet devious. She had always struggled with self-image, believing that her lack of conventional beauty had held her back in life. So when an opportunity came her way to exact a little revenge on the world that had often overlooked her, she took it. Her plan was simple: fake being unattractive to infiltrate the world of elite blind dates, sabotage her way into ruining the reputation of the man who, in her eyes, represented everything wrong with society. She wasn't interested in him for love. She wanted to expose him, to bring down this heartless CEO who'd turned down countless women just like her. But she didn't expect to get tangled in the web of her own deception. On the night of their blind date, Jia Yu showed up looking nothing like the glamorous woman she was known to be when she tried. Her hair was messy, her clothes were plain, and her makeup was minimal, purposefully so. She wanted to look plain, unattractive, and forgettable. But the moment she sat down across from Lu Chen, something she never anticipated happened. Instead of dismissing her like he had with the others, Lu Chen actually noticed her. He wasn't looking at her as if she were invisible. He wasn't acting cold and uninterested. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of curiosity, maybe even a hint of interest. Lu Chen was used to women throwing themselves at him. Beautiful, charming, successful women who knew exactly how to make him swoon. But this woman, Jia Yu, was different. He didn't understand it. There was something so refreshing about her. Something raw, real, and dare he admit it, intriguing. This wasn't the typical woman he had grown tired of. She wasn't trying to impress him with her looks or charm. She was simply herself. But Jia Yu wasn't there for a fairy tale romance. She was there to ruin him. She had spent so many years being overlooked by society, passed over by men like Lu Chen, and she wanted him to see what it felt like to be dismissed, to be invisible. But somewhere between the tension-filled silence of their date and their surprisingly engaging conversation, Jia Yu started to feel something she hadn't planned for. She was starting to enjoy Lu Chen's company. There was a side to him that she didn't expect, one that wasn't cold, one that wasn't a distant, arrogant businessman. There was warmth in his words, humor in his smile, and a depth in his eyes that left her questioning her assumptions. Could it be that she was wrong about him? As the night went on, the date took an unexpected turn. Jia Yu found herself laughing, genuinely for the first time in months, something she hadn't realized she had missed. She had prepared herself for a night of disappointment, for a man who would treat her just like the others, like someone unworthy of his time. Instead, Lu Chen listened. He asked her questions, paid attention to her answers, and seemed genuinely interested in who she was as a person. The chemistry between them grew, and with every passing minute, the lines between her plan and her emotions began to blur. But as the night ended, Jia Yu couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed a line. She wasn't supposed to like him, wasn't supposed to feel something more than resentment and vengeance. After all, wasn't it her goal to ruin his reputation, to expose him as just another cold-hearted CEO who didn't deserve the adoration he received. Yet here she was, feeling conflicted and, for the first time, truly questioning her own feelings. As the days passed, Xia Yu tried to distance herself from Lu Chen, convincing herself that it was just a momentary lapse in judgment. She continued with her plan to ruin him, but something inside her felt hollow. Was she really the same person who had wanted to tear him down, or had she unknowingly let something deeper grow between them? Her emotions were in turmoil, and the longer she tried to ignore them, the more difficult it became to maintain the facade she had created. Lu Chen, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about Xia Yu. He had never met a woman who didn't try to impress him or chase after his wealth. But Xia Yu, she didn't care about any of that. He knew she was hiding something, but he couldn't quite figure out what. Her behavior was strange. Her demeanor unlike any woman he had ever met. Yet it was her raw honesty, her unpretentiousness, that had him intrigued. The more he tried to move on, the more he realized that his feelings for her were real. But there was a problem. He didn't know how to approach her. Xia Yu wasn't like the others. She wasn't easy to read. Every time he tried to get closer, she pushed him away, always with an excuse or a new reason to keep their distance. One evening, when they crossed paths again, Xia Yu finally gave in to the truth that she had been avoiding. Her plan had worked too well. She had managed to bring down the walls she had built around herself, only to realize that the person she had set out to destroy was the one who had made her feel alive again. But was it too late? Was her deception too much for him to forgive? Would she lose everything she had started to care about? All because of a lie she told herself in the name of revenge. The tension hung in the air as Lu Chen stood before her, waiting for an answer. Xia Yu had no idea what would come next. Would he forgive her? Or would he see her as nothing more than the woman who had tried to ruin his life? The story was far from over, and one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. As the camera zooms in on their faces, the audience is left on the edge of their seat, eagerly waiting to see how this complex love story will unfold. Will love conquer revenge, or will their past actions destroy any chance of happiness? Tune in for the next part to find out. The tension between Xia Yu and Lu Chen had been growing, like a storm waiting to break. In the days that followed their first blind date, both were caught in the web of their own emotions, trying to navigate the confusing mix of feelings that neither of them had expected to experience. For Xia Yu, the situation was becoming increasingly difficult. She had started out with one clear goal: to ruin Lu Chen's reputation, to expose him as just another cold, heartless CEO who had no regard for people like her. But as the days passed and their interactions continued, she found herself falling into a trap of her own making. The plan that had seemed so simple in the beginning was now entangled in her emotions. She couldn't deny that there was something about Lu Chen that she found irresistible. It wasn't his wealth or status, but the subtle kindness in his actions, the moments when he allowed his guard to slip and reveal a side of himself that few people ever saw. She had started seeing a man, not the untouchable CEO everyone else knew. But Xia Yu wasn't the only one struggling with conflicting emotions. Lu Chen had never been the kind of man to get swept up in romance. For years, he had built his empire with a single-minded focus, believing that love and relationships were nothing but distractions. His blind dates were nothing more than a way to appease the people around him, his family, his business associates, who insisted he needed a partner to secure his future. He had never expected to meet someone like Xia Yu. She was different from the women he had known, the ones who only cared about what he could offer. Xia Yu wasn't after his money, his status, or his connections. She was real, and for the first time in a long time, Lu Chen felt like he was talking to someone who wasn't pretending to be someone else. But something about her kept him on edge. She was always distant, pushing him away whenever he got too close. Her eyes would soften when they talked, but there was a guardedness in her voice, something that made him wonder if she was hiding something. He knew she wasn't telling him the whole truth, and yet he couldn't bring himself to back off. The more she resisted, the more determined he became to break through the walls she had built. The deeper he got to know her, the more complicated the situation became. He realized that there was something unspoken between them, something that neither of them was willing to confront. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu's plan to ruin him continued to hang over her like a dark cloud. She had originally seen him as nothing more than a target, someone who represented everything she despised about the world. But now, she found herself at a crossroads. She wasn't sure what was worse, the guilt of deceiving him or the fear of losing him. The thought of him finding out the truth terrified her. She had already started to feel something more than what she had intended, a connection, an attachment. It wasn't just the idea of revenge anymore. It was real. She had never imagined that she would fall for someone like him, especially someone as powerful and cold as Lu Chen. As the days went by, Xiaoyu struggled with her emotions, torn between the woman she had set out to be and the woman she was becoming. She couldn't ignore the feelings that had begun to surface. Feelings of longing, of wanting something she thought she could never have. But she was scared. She had always thought that love was a luxury, something that people like her couldn't afford. And now that she was in the midst of it, she didn't know how to handle it. Lu Chen, on the other hand, was growing more impatient. He could feel the distance between them. And the more she pulled away, the more determined he became to figure out why. He had never been one to chase after anyone, but something about Xiaoyu made him want to fight for her. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than she was letting on. He had been patient, waiting for her to open up, but with each passing day, he felt like he was losing her. It wasn't just her secrets that bothered him. It was the sense that she wasn't being honest with herself, that she was too afraid to face what was really going on between them. Then, one night, everything came to a head. Lu Chen invited Xiaoyu to dinner, hoping that he could finally get through to her. He had decided that tonight he was going to confront her. He couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when he knew deep down that there was something more between them. He needed to know the truth. Xiaoyu, however, had made up her mind. She had to end things with him before it was too late. She couldn't keep pretending to be someone she wasn't, especially when the truth was eating away at her. She had convinced herself that the best thing for both of them was to walk away before their feelings grew any stronger. She had to end this before it turned into something she couldn't control. She had already hurt him once by pretending to be someone else, and she wasn't going to let herself do it again. The dinner was tense. The conversation was stilted. Both of them tiptoeing around the truth. Neither of them able to say what they really felt. Xiaoyu's heart was racing as she sat across from Lu Chen, her mind clouded with confusion. She wanted to tell him everything, the truth, the lies, the deception, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. She didn't want to lose him, but she didn't know how to keep him without tearing both of their worlds apart. Lu Chen, sensing her unease, leaned forward. "Xiaoyu," he said quietly, his voice softer than she expected. "There's something you're not telling me. I can see it. You've been hiding something from me, and I need you to be honest. I need to know the truth. Is this real?" Xiaoyu's breath caught in her throat. The question hung in the air like a dagger, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She wanted to run, to escape the vulnerability that had been building between them. But she couldn't. She was stuck in this moment, caught between the person she had pretended to be and the person she was becoming. As the silence stretched on, Lu Chen's gaze never left her, his eyes searching for answers she wasn't ready to give. It was now or never. The truth would either set them free or destroy everything they had started to build. Would Xiaoyu finally come clean? Or would the lies she had told push them both to the edge? The weight of the moment was crushing, and as the tension thickened, the fate of their relationship hung in the balance. The answers they sought were just out of reach, but one thing was certain: nothing would be the same after this night. Xiaoyu's fingers tightened around her napkin as Lu Chen's words echoed in her ears. His tone wasn't harsh, but it held something deeper: hurt, confusion, and a quiet desperation. He deserved the truth, but could she give it to him without destroying everything? She took a deep breath. Looking into his eyes, "Lu Chen," she finally said, her voice trembling, "I didn't come into your life with good intentions. That first blind date, I planned to embarrass you. I thought you were just another arrogant CEO who treated women like disposable accessories. I faked everything, my looks, my attitude, because I wanted to make you feel what women like me feel when we're dismissed without being seen for who we are." Lu Chen sat still, his expression unreadable. The weight of her confession hung heavy between them. Xiaoyu continued, her voice cracking now. "But then you were nothing like I expected. You listened. You looked past what I wore and how I acted. And worst of all, you made me feel seen. And that scared me more than anything." He leaned back slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "So this was all a setup at first," she whispered. "But it stopped being a game a long time ago." Silence followed. It wasn't cold or angry. It was reflective. Lu Chen had been betrayed before by people who pretended to care, who wore masks. But somehow, Xiaoyu's truth felt different. Painful, yes, but honest. "Do you even know how rare it is," he said after a moment, his voice low, "for me to feel something for someone?" He let out a breath. "You're right, I was closed off. I kept people at a distance. I thought love was a weakness I couldn't afford. But you crashed into my world without warning. You lied, yes. But you were also the only person who didn't treat me like a prize to win. That's what made you real." Xiaoyu blinked back tears, not sure what to say. She had expected anger. She had expected him to walk away. But instead, he was still here, trying to understand. "I don't want your pity," she said, voice shaking. "I just didn't want to leave without you knowing the truth." Lu Chen stood up slowly, walked around the table, and stopped beside her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he held out his hand. "We've both been pretending in our own ways," he said gently. "Maybe it's time we stop running from what's real." She stared at his hand, overwhelmed. "You're not mad?" "Oh, I'm mad," he admitted with a small smile. "But not because you lied. I'm mad that I almost let you go without fighting for you." Xiaoyu laughed through her tears, feeling a weight lift from her chest. "So what now?" He shrugged. "We start over. No lies, no masks, just us." And that was it. The tension that had been building for weeks finally broke. Not with a dramatic breakup or a bitter confrontation, but with a quiet promise to try, to forgive, and to grow. In the weeks that followed, Xiaoyu slowly integrated into Lu Chen's life, not as someone hiding in the shadows, but as the woman who had challenged him to feel again. His cold exterior began to melt in the warmth of her presence. At business dinners, people were shocked to see the infamous CEO smiling, even laughing. His employees noticed a softer tone in his meetings. and even his family began to realize something had shifted. It was Xia Yu. She brought color to his gray world. Xia Yu, in turn, started to see herself differently too. She wasn't just the girl who faked being ugly or played games. She was someone who deserved love, who could be loved for who she truly was. The woman who had once been afraid of falling now walked beside a man who had once feared feeling. Their relationship wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt, insecurities that surfaced, reminders of the way things began, but they faced it together, with honesty this time. And every time those past shadows tried to creep in, Lu Chen would gently remind her, "We chose the truth. That's all that matters now." In the end, what started as a plan for revenge became something deeper than either of them expected. A cold CEO who turned away every woman he met had finally opened his heart, not to someone who tried to impress him, but to someone who dared to challenge him, who made him feel like a man, not just a brand. And Xia Yu, she proved that sometimes love doesn't come in the perfect package or through perfect plans. Sometimes it begins with a lie, but finds its way to the truth. For those watching and wondering if real love still exists, this story is a reminder. It's not about how it starts. It's about whether you have the courage to choose what's real when the truth finally shows up.